Okay, I'm Ellen Ryan, and I'm in Prospect, Nova Scotia, and I've lived here the best part of my life, 74 years. My first memories, of course, I was born in the second year of the Second World War, right? 1940. So all my first memories are about the war. And my first nightmares. Always people landing under the government wharf, attacking the village, all that. And of course they were blowing up the convoys that were going out of Halifax. And the whole entire shore was covered in crude oil. You couldn't walk on the shore at all because of the crude oil. Everything was covered with it. And we thought it was great fun to go and pick up the rations that would float ashore. I had no idea that people were actually being killed. I don't know, didn't think about that at all. But we'd find plum jam and egg powder and great big cans and all sorts of things we thought were wonderful. And they would send trucks to gather it all up. And they really expected people who had everything rationed to turn it in. And I suppose some people did, but I know we ate a lot of it. Yeah. And so that was sort of the first part of it. And then going to school, and went to school in the top 2 rooms of the hall, the community hall. And that's owned by the Catholic Church. And the Sisters of Charity taught there. And there were 2 classrooms, one from grade kindergarten to grade 5, and then grade 6 up were in the other classroom. And I went to school there for 11 years. Well, it was very interesting. It was certainly different than the way children are taught, I think, today. It was a very, very limited curriculum because, of course, when you have 40 children and they're all in different grades, it's a challenge to teach them. There were 2 sisters teaching there at that time. And, but it was, I've always loved school. I'm sure if you don't like school, it wouldn't have been a good experience at all. But I've always loved school. And the sisters were wonderful in a way. They were very, very controlling. And however, they taught us to put on plays. They allowed you to paint if you felt artistic. I remember being allowed to paint things on the windows at Christmas, and so it was quite a different experience. And these women, we were very fortunate to have them to teach us, because many of these rural schools were staffed by women who had graduated from Teachers College, in Truro. But these women, many of whom were from the United States, had degrees, university degrees. The sister that I remember best, Sister Beatrix, had a master's in mathematics. And I think we were very fortunate to have them to teach in our school. For all the downside, I mean, there are always things you don't like, but mostly it was good. My dad was a fisherman, inshore fisherman, probably one of the last self-sufficient people in the village. Grew his own potatoes, cut his own hay, kept animals, fished for a living. But about the fishermen, they got up early, They probably started their day about 4 o'clock and worked really, really hard. Inshore fishing looks like a job where, oh, you'll only work all summer and then, you'll have the winter off, but that's not correct. They fished lobster in the winter, and when he wasn't fishing, my dad was mending nets, he was knitting headings for lobster pots because they built them all out of wood, and really busy fixing their boats. They were wooden boats, which take a lot of work, give you hives just to think about it. And so, yeah, really busy life. But I don't know, we had no money to speak of, but I never felt deprived. I'm sure I didn't know I was poor until I went to Halifax and saw people who had a lot more. Yeah, probably. Yeah. What I remember is that if there were lots of fish, the price was terrible. And if there was a good price, that was because there weren't many fish. And one of the reasons I think that fishing has always had a really difficult time is because every fisherman was an entrepreneur. This whole idea now of having a union of fishermen was unheard of. Everybody worked for himself. So, very difficult to change how things are operating when everyone's working for themselves.
Dr. Helene van Donnik and Myrto Messer from the Cobequid Wildlife Rehabilitation Center have dedicated their lives to rehabilitating injured birds of prey. Together, they show how human interaction is the major cause of injury to these animals. November 29th at 9 p.m., Documentary Sunday presents Saving Birds of Prey. Tune in on Eastlink TV Channel 10 or HD 610, available only to Eastlink customers.
All of my brothers and all of the kids their age left here to go and earn a living somewhere else because the fishing was just about finished. Okay, the inshore fishing's been on the way downhill for a long time. And because I remember my brother Alf, who was 8 years older than me, loved the ocean, wanted very much to be a fisherman, but my dad said to him, I can't take you in my boat. There just isn't enough work, there isn't enough money coming in. So my brother left and joined the Navy. So that was different. That changed, and by the time I was about 12, it was a very small population, but there were still some shops, a post office, a school, a church. All of those things were still here. Those are all gone now. I really think Prospect and these little villages are really a microcosm of what's going on throughout the Maritime provinces. That a way of life has passed, and we're in a time of change, right? And Prospect, for instance, is a bedroom community, and it's mostly all elderly people. It's very sad not to have any children, but our children have left. Here's a story that I think is kind of funny about it. The Department of Transport has always maintained the lights on the harbor and on the wharf, on the community wharf. Well, it was the government wharf. And now, of course, the federal government divested themselves of those wharves and lighthouses and all that sort of thing. And so the community took over the wharf, and we now have to take care of it, raise money, maintain it. And there's a light on it for navigational purposes. So a gentleman from the Department of Transport called me and said, "Now, Mrs. Ryan, you understand," he said, "that we've just changed the light on the wharf, and from now on it's a solar light." "Oh," I said, "that's wonderful." But he said, "I really want you to understand, I don't want you to be upset about it, but this is the last time that we will do anything like this. From now on, we will not be maintaining the light." And he was, he was being so sweet about the whole thing. And after a while, it struck me really funny. I said, this is a village that has lost everything that made it a community. I can't get upset about a light. It just seemed like, yeah, so what? One more thing, eh? But that's the way things are changing on the coast. There isn't any point in fighting and arguing about it. It's the way it is. It's been a long-term plan to close down the inshore fishery, get rid of all that infrastructure, save the government a lot of money.
Me being the last fisherman, and my brother also, the two of us are the last people fishing with this village. This village, it was built on fishing. Everybody here, when I was a kid, fished. That was it. And now there's nobody. The wharves are gone. Fish stores are gone. The fish flakes are gone. Knowing we're the only ones left, it's sad, because this was a thriving fishing community. And because of what's happened over the years, I suppose, the fish are gone, and so are the fishermen. That's what happened.
Prospect Village has been, a fishing capital of this area for I don't even know how many years.
When the older guys got too old to go down there, like John Kiley, Victor Kiley, Earl Duggan, all the guys that fished, number one, Victor had no sons to take his place. John Owen had one son who got sick. Earl Duggan had nobody to take his place. I don't think the young people felt it worthwhile getting into fishery.
We've seen it over the past few years of the decline of fishermen out of that area, but it's going to be an odd thing to see that come to an end, the last fisherman out of Prospect Village.
Of course, since I was a kid, you were able to, anybody could have a license, a lobster license. And it wasn't A class or B class, it was just a lobster license, and it was worth, you bought it for 25 cents. And all these cottage people that lived along the coastline bought these licenses up, and it allowed them to fish during the season. And they could set as many traps, I guess, as they wanted with that license. So everybody bought them for, they had for their own purpose. They could have lobsters cooked at every weekend. But anyway, when the government started to move in and put restrictions on the licenses, but there was so many people wanting to keep that license, so I think the government stepped in and said, okay, we'll have an A and a B. We'll give these cottage people, or whoever they are, summer people and whatnot, people like myself, a B license, but they're not transferable. They're not able to sell them. They're not able, and when they die with them, and that's the end of it. And that's how they were going to eliminate that B license. So there's very few B licenses left. We're the only two here that have them, and they'll soon be gone, I guess. But I don't know. That was the way it came into being, I guess. The A license was for the full-time fishermen, and the B license was for we'll call them cottage people, and although I never had a cottage here. I lived here all my life, but I worked elsewhere, and that was it.
Retired marine scientist Bob Semple shares his experiences filming sharks, shedding light on the many dark myths that surround them. This documentary shows sharks active in their natural environment. December 6th at 9 p.m., Documentary Sunday presents Sharks, The Semple Truth. Tune in on Eastlink TV Channel 10 or HD 610. Available only to Eastlink customers.
I used to fish with Kylie's, and we had traps set, and we caught so many fish. Pollock. It was nothing to catch boatloads every day, big pollock in the trap. We trap fish them. You could catch them on handline too. That's a thing of the past. But there was haddock, there was cod, there was halibut, there was herring, mackerel, tuna, a lot of tuna here. They even canned them in this area. They had a canner right up here back of the house. And but now the restrictions on all that stuff, now the quotas and everything just destroyed that. And the quotas are there because everything was overfished in the past, I think. But there was everything you wanted to catch here one time. I guess that's why the old people settled in this area, because it was so the fishing was so good. And I remember Dad saying, once they put these draggers on the ocean, that's the end of fishing, ground fishing. And he was right. Anyone with common sense would know that. You drag the bottom of the ocean, you kill everything that's down there. The bycatch, okay, you may be looking for cod, but you're going to catch lobsters, you're going to catch everything down there, and that was the end of it when they started doing that. That was the end of fishing. Ever since then, it just slowed down. Even the trap fishing out here a few years back, there was huge traps out here for mackerel, and they were catching 150,000 pounds a day. And I wondered how long this could keep going. And this was just here, Prospect, one place. And you got the whole coastline, Nova Scotia here, where they were fishing, trap fishing for mackerel. And, they were catching millions of pounds probably a day along this coast. And how long can that last? Now you can catch all kinds of mackerel out there. They're about 4 inches long. So, what does that tell you? Yeah. I don't know. It's sad when you think of it, but it's the way things go. I mean, I get lost there sometimes, thinking about the past and thinking now. But as far as make me feel, I guess I've lived my life. I've done it. It's gone. I can't go back to it because there's nothing there to go back to, and it's just history now.
My name is Dave Burns. I live in Prospect Village. I grew up in Halifax and been down here for about 7 years now. So I found myself the caretaker of the stage. This stage is important to me for a variety of reasons, for my family's personal history, for the history of the village, and it's just something that's so recognizable. I felt that since it was in my care, it was my responsibility not to see it fall in the water. It's a good thing that I didn't know how bad the condition was. I might not have started it. The stage ended up being several phases. One was doing the crib, which is essentially the foundation, since this building floats over, or it stands over the water. So that was done first, and then later the sills were quite in bad shape. You know, you can imagine this is about 200 years old, so I don't know exactly, but that's about 150,000 tides that have passed underneath this this stage. So this is a tough old building, but then the village is quite amazing in that way itself. So it's a very worthwhile project, and one that I think that needed to be done. This was the last building of its kind standing in Prospect, and during Hurricane 1, which I wasn't here at that time, but I've seen the photographs and heard the stories, and as a matter of fact, if you go underneath the stage, the older timbers are leaning at about between 5 and 10 degrees, and that's how much pressure was on this building. And the outside corner came off of the building with all the debris that was being forced by it, and it was just something else. So the fact that this is even standing is quite a story in itself. And you know, what the future holds, I don't know. You know, there are rising waters, the tides are higher, the water is higher than it ever was. So if there's a vulnerable point to the stage, it would be storm surge, and you know, I've addressed that in several ways, and I've had a lot of help locally. The people have been really great. So I think that we can give it a fighting chance. You know, storms are a part of our life here, and I hope that this can weather a few more. This environment is not for the faint of heart. It's a tough environment, and the people that used to make their living from the sea, I have the highest respect. They're tough people. You know, just history. You know, people that you know, had passed through these doors and worked, had left. As a matter of fact, when I took the roof off last year, it was really interesting. The light, the bright light, revealed all kinds of writing, faded writing, all over this stage, and there was some that I was aware of, and there's a couple references of shipwrecks, and there's funerals and record catches, and it's really quite moving. And as the light was shining in here, it was unbelievable. You could see that a lot of the people that were working both up and downstairs left notes. I couldn't make much of it out, but it was, you know, it had been used and cared about. It's a tribute to the people that used to work here, and since it's the last one in the village, it's a tribute to the people that used to make their living here and on the water, and I'm proud of that.